The worst one collectively was most of the shoots with Mike Gurton, because it always seemed to be either 100 degrees or negative 20. It's no fault of Mike's.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Fine Homebuilding Editor Brian Pontolilo, former Fine Homebuilding Editor Justin Fink, and producer Jeff Rose. Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. So yes, folks, you heard correctly. I said former editor Justin Fink and editor Brian Pontolilo. So as you might have imagined, we got some big news at last week's staff meeting. You want to tell us about that, Justin?
Yes, I have decided to resign my post at the head of Fine Homebuilding and Green Building Advisor. I'm going out and being a full-time remodeler. I've been doing it part-time, as a lot of people in the audience know from the first half of this show's history. But I decided... I
think there's going to be a bunch of people ask out there who say, why the heck would you do that?
I know.
What motivated this?
It is the best job you can get. For a variety of reasons. One, I've been here for 16 years and just wanted to do something different. I feel like I wanted a new and different kind of challenge. Two, I wanted to kind of put my money where my mouth is in terms of keep craft alive. I think it's easy to sit behind a desk and say, we need more tradesmen. Tradesmen should feel proud of what they do, and then go, as long as it's not me, like somebody like it's really important we do this. So you guys should raise your hands and go do it. So I feel like, well, let me go out and help. And third, I just really miss creating things on a full-time basis. I want to be out there, and I want to be, neck deep in remodeling projects. I'm going to hopefully focus. I don't know how much of a focus I will have, except for a marketing focus towards, the projects that I will choose to share. Most in social media and on the website and such are going to be the old house projects, because that's what I find to be the most interesting. And I think, those houses that are, pre-World War II housing is just gorgeous to me. And I feel like there's just so much of it. And, it takes somebody who's got a careful touch. And I'm not saying that nobody else can do it but me. I'm just saying that, I'm trying to increase the amount of people that are willing to work on those houses and take them seriously and respect the character and the history of them, and want to make sure that gets taken care of. The name of the company is going to be Fink and Son. I have a 4-month-old boy he's going to be the apprentice business partner.
Do you have those little tiny Carhartts for him yet?
I do, except they're not. I didn't get the super, super tiny ones. He's going to have to grow into them. I got him for when he's old enough to be able to actually walk around.
Awesome. And what do you say about this, Brian Pontolilo? We keep dragging you back in.
Well, Justin failed to mention the most important part of all this is that he also has a new position on the Fine Homebuilding masthead, which is what I'm most excited about this whole thing. And we created and I guess first I'll say Justin, is sort of, and Justin, you can tell me I'm wrong, but he's sort of flipping the script on what he's been doing, right? So he's been at Fine Homebuilding for a long time and doing these as full-time and doing these remodeling projects on the side and trying to squeeze them in. And now he's going out to be a full-time remodeler, but he's going to stay with us. And we created a fun position for him called Builder at Large. And the idea is that while he's out there in the building world, he's going to bring back content for us. And, that content, we've talked about it a lot over the past few weeks, what that might look like. And, the idea is to, get some stuff from Justin's job sites, but also to, have Justin continue to visit builders like we all do at Fine Homebuilding, to visit builders and bring us back, the best of what he's learning from other builders as he visits their job sites. And he's going to do that in the magazine. He's going to do that in video. So I'm excited that we're going to have a person who is, out in the field, and like the rest of our authors, but with a regular commitment to turn it in great content for us and for our readers and viewers. So that's the exciting. I'm excited to see Justin thrive as a remodeler, but that's what's exciting to me as someone who's still going to be here at Fine Homebuilding.
And having to make content.
Come up with content. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I get comments from, I let everybody know on social media that I was making this move, and, obviously got a lot of supportive comments back, but a lot of people saying, we'll miss your articles and videos at Fine Homebuilding. And I just went, no, you're going to be getting more of them than you ever have, because now I can actually have time to make them. Whereas I'm not going to be in a management position having to oversee other things. I get to do the fun part now.
So, Brian, regular listeners of the show know you've been running the Green Building Advisor website and steering that. Who's going to be running that ship now?
Yeah, I'm excited to make this announcement too, that Kylie Jacques, who most, any regular podcast listener will know, because she's been a regular on the podcast now for a couple of years. Yeah. Kylie had actually already started to work with me at GBA a few months ago. She had expressed interest in working on the site, and she had launched her own blog on GBA. It runs every other Monday. It's called The Green Advocate. And so she had already started to work with me. So it was kind of a natural fit. I think we had hoped that Kylie would help out more and more with GBA as time went on, and as GBA is continuing to grow, which is really exciting. And so I think we all saw Kylie as a natural person to pick up more and more responsibility on GBA. So the process just kind of got sped up by Justin's departure. So now she's getting kind of shoved into the new role. But she's super. I mean, anyone who's listened to the show knows Kylie's super smart, super interested in all of this stuff. She's an excellent blogger. She's super organized. So she's really the right person for the job over at GBA.
Well, stay tuned for further developments, I would tell everyone, because it's still evolving a little bit, right? But let's talk about you guys today, because you both have very long histories with the company. Justin, can you tell me how you arrived here? As I understand it, you came for an internship and never left?
That's correct. Yeah, I came right out of college, and I actually I interviewed. I applied rather for a job at Fine Woodworking. At the time, I had caught the woodworking bug, and still being in college, it certainly wasn't working on any houses, but I had the ability to screw around with some really terrible home furniture projects, just really embarrassing stuff. And so I thought, well, this will be cool. They passed I'm guessing they must have seen that I had a part-time job at Home Depot. And so they passed my application across the hall to Fine Homebuilding. And then I got a call from Roe Osborne, who our audience would know. He worked for us for a long time, brought in some of the biggest authors we have, and then went to work for JLC. And now he's freelancing for us again. So small world there. But so he called me up. We did a phone interview. I came in. And I said to Kevin Ireton, who was the editor at the time, if you hire me, I'll never leave. And so 16 years later, I'm kind of breaking that promise, but I feel like it's all right because Kevin left a lot of years ago. So he voided his end of the contract, I think.
And so then you went to becoming an assistant editor, associate editor. Then there was like special projects editor, right? I don't know all the things.
I don't even know. I'd have to count all the different steps along the way. I don't know. I never really felt like I didn't even know that much about building when I started this company. Honestly, I really feel like I was educated by Fine Homebuilding. Like I feel like I just had the best university education you can get. I was just thrust in, and
I think all of us would say that, Justin.
Yeah. Well, I mean, occasionally we get somebody who's a builder who then starts here. At least that was the old formula.
There's still tons to learn.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't know. I think I just benefited from the fact that I couldn't get enough of it. I just felt like I I wanted more and more info all the time. I just wanted to soak it up like a sponge. So that, I'm sure, came across as enthusiastic and energetic and wanting to move up the ladder. Unfortunately, the moving up the ladder gets you farther and farther away from
the fun
making
part.
content. Yeah. Which is fine because it's cool to shape the direction of where things are going to. Plus, when you're in charge, you can assign yourself articles.
Ones you like.
Yeah, that's right. All the other ones to Patrick. Yeah, so that's been my journey.
And how long have you been editor?
Let's see. I took over from Rob. What was that? 3 years ago? 2 years ago? I don't remember. I was the editor first and then editorial director. I think I've been editorial director for a couple of years now.
And Brian, were you here already when Justin started as an intern?
I was. Though our stories are not all that much different. I was sort of a non-traditional college student. It took me, 10 years and almost 10 years in 5 different schools to actually finish my my degree. And I finished my degree in professional writing. So by the time I finished my college degree in professional writing, I had also worked in building trades throughout that 10-year span, on and off, different types of jobs. One of my first ever jobs I did for a few summers was working for a general contractor. Sometimes brutal work, picking up shingles off the ground for 3 days in a row. Other times really fun. I remember one week long stint where they just put me on a sidewall that was on the side of a house, had almost no windows on it, and just showed me how to lay up cedar shingles. And it was like, that was so much fun to learn that, the basics of that process and just go to it for a week. But then, as soon as they needed me to be, running for coffee or picking up trash again, I was right back on those duties. But I had this minimal amount of carpentry and experience around job sites. I had worked doing landscape installations for a few years, actually, on that kind of thing. A lot of stonework, walls and flat work and other stuff like that. And then at the time, I was married to a painter. And so because I was going through school and working, various jobs, I often was helping out with that business as well. So, I thought I was a shoo-in for a job at Fine Homebuilding with my, professional writing experience and my little bit of knowledge of the trades, which turns out was not nearly enough. But like Justin, I think I just sent a letter to HR and said, maybe I didn't, this was before the days of websites having all the job listings on them. And I think I might have just sent a letter to HR that said, I'm interested in work at Fine Homebuilding, and here's my resume. And I was working for a local newspaper covering 3 small towns in Connecticut, town politics, and the school board of education meetings. And Andy Engel was the executive editor, I think, of Fine Homebuilding at the time, and I covered the town that he lived in. So I don't think this was a real important factor of me getting the job. But when I came in for my interview, he did recognize my name and knew me from that work. So anyway, I got hired like Justin did as an intern, and it was a great internship because it was a paid internship, and you're at a national magazine. So I was hoping to get a job, but I was also thinking this is just a good thing, a good stepping stone for me if that's what it turns out to be. And I didn't get hired right away. I ended my internship. They didn't have a position open, but I think it was only maybe 2 or 3 months later that something did open up, or they created a new position or whatever. They were looking for someone. So Andy gave me a call, and I was hired later that year.
Wow.
So, and then
I'd never heard that story. That's a great story.
Yeah. And that's when I found out I really didn't know anything about building, that I had a ton to learn. And like Justin, through the years, you really do get your education. And what I've realized, and GBA was another shock to another, let's say another humbling experience in how little I know, and or maybe let's say this, how much there is to know.
Yeah.
Because I can't say how little I know after all these years. I know quite a bit, but also there's so much to learn all the time.
You guys touched on something I'd like to pick up with. You seem to both recognize the importance of the Fine Homebuilding brand. You wanted to work here. what do you think is important about the work we do, and why do people save Fine Home Buildings and National Geographics and throw away every other magazine?
Brian, you first.
Me first?
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's not different for the pros who get the magazine and for the non-pros who get the magazine. But I think I'd like to address this from that pro perspective. But maybe not. Maybe it's the same answer. I'm just going to give it from that pro perspective. But when this work is so important, and the information that we share may be so important to any individual who's trying to get this work done on budget, on time, without looming failures, all these things. Building, remodeling, the truth is it's often high stakes work, right? Whether it's, maybe not for the homeowner who's doing a trim project in their house. Maybe that's not high stakes. It's a few $100s in crown molding. And if they don't do a great job, maybe that's not high stakes. But, for a builder who's staking his reputation and his profitability and all these types of things on one crown molding job after another, or the architect who's designing a high performance assembly for the first time, then this work and this information, the work is high stakes and the information becomes very important. So there's more and more places, maybe great for the builder, maybe challenging for the journalist or editor. There's more and more places to get this information now, but there wasn't for a long time. And so it's, why do they save their magazines? I think that's one of the reasons that they save their magazines, so they can go look, a magazine with a story. I'll just keep using crown molding as my example, but a magazine with a story on how to install crown molding lands it in your mailbox, in May of 1992. You may not be installing crown molding, but a year from then you might have a job installing crown molding, and you might want to look back at that article to get information on materials, tools, and tips from someone who has that experience. So, we have the website and we have the archives now. I think magazine lovers keep the magazines for its visual appeal, probably at this point. What I hear from our readers of the magazine is just how much they love our illustrations. That's what I hear over and over and over again. And that has a similarity to, Patrick, to the other example you gave of National Geographic. In fact, I met a guy last winter when I was having lunch with him, and when I told him I worked at Fine Homebuilding, he told me specifically that I've gotten so many magazines over the years, and the two that I have stored in my basement are my National Geographics and my Fine Homebuildings. And he immediately went to our illustrations. So presentation's part of the appeal. And then I also think, and again, this is something that's changing with social media and other platforms, but there's a social aspect to what we do. As a magazine that is written by, edited by, and read by very like-minded people, and people, are you could say that our authors, editors, and readers are the same people. Our editors become our authors, become our readers become our authors. We've had authors become editors. Our editors are doing building projects on their own house or on the side. So we're all sort of in this together. And so I think that community aspect of it is really huge too.
What do you think, Justin? Why is Fine Home Building important?
I think I agree with everything Brian said. I would add to that by saying that, your house, whether you're working on your own house as a non-pro or somebody else's house as a pro. And I would argue that we've had a lot of internal discussions, as a little sidebar here, about pro versus non-pro, and who we're talking to. And it took me like 15 years to get to the realization that it doesn't matter. We're just talking to somebody who loves building and wants good building information. That's it. I don't care whether you make your living at it or you do one project every 3 years. So I feel like we're talking to the same people, but the point being that a house is going to likely be the most expensive investment anyone's going to make. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And particularly when I came on board with the magazine, we were at a really interesting period of time where the way we were building was in the middle of changing. Zip system hadn't come out yet. A lot of people, I know a lot of people still are, but it was a lot of fiberglass bats, Tyvek, OSB was kind of had been established at that point, but continued to grow in market share. And we started to learn that we had some problems with using those new materials. When we started to introduce new materials while following that old building formula, we started to see a lot of problems. And it really kind of brought into focus how important the building of these structures is and getting them right, because it's a substantial amount of money on the line, and human health and comfort and it's not anything to be taken lightly. And so I think you need to have a serious educational source when the stakes are that high. And I think that's what I liked about Fine Homebuilding. What I think is important is there's just not a lot of fluff. It's not, we don't do a ton of features that are on, I don't know, how to spruce up your mantle, or how to, 16 tricks for little jigs in your workshop or something. I mean, it's like, how to keep your windows from rotting the wall underneath them, how to
it's
what
stuff
do I
that matters,
what do I do if, and obviously there's some other things mixed in there. At its inception and for a long time prior to YouTube and Instagram, there was, we were always we had the ability to connect builders who were in completely different regions. I remember there being like this huge kind of moment with all these readers who were going, you guys use sidewinders when we use worm drives? And like, what is that, a coil framing nailer? Where the hell did you get that? Like, it was wild how different everything was from one side of the country to the other. And to be able to pick up tips from somebody totally different than what you do, it had so much value. And I think I would argue that our audience member, our reader, is kind of a generalist at heart. They're not, we're less likely to have somebody who's, all I do is pour foundation walls. I'm a subscriber to Fine Homebuilding. It's usually you have some kind of an abiding interest in the whole house. And, I'm never going to install solar panels, I hope, by myself, but I'm curious to see how it's done. And I want to see how it's done well, so that when I hire somebody to do it, I can run them against that checklist and go, does this guy know what he's talking about? Is he following what I've come to understand as best practice? It just kind of raises the bar all around. So that was kind of a long, rambling explanation, as I always am want to.
You're good.
I think you hit some really great points about the picking up on that thread of the similarity of who reads the magazine. Because on the one hand, we can say, oh, it's for pros, because even the DIYers or the owner builders that we have need that pro level information. But on the other hand, you could say it's for DIYers, because like you just said, the electrical article that we publish, it's not for master electricians.
No,
it's for the builder or the homeowner that either needs to do something themselves or wants to make sure it's getting done right.
Right. And we're never going to do an article like, now we know that you install 14 electrical panels per month. Here's how to increase your efficiency by 5%. It doesn't, like, whether you're putting in, a circuit in your own house or you're doing them all day, every day, it's still, you have to put a circuit in. I mean, it's still all of the same things matter. Yeah. And I want to hear from the guy who's put in 5 million of them,
Yeah.
From my perspective, that is one of the strengths of the brand. The people who are in the magazine are their experts. You don't have to guess whether this person really knows what they're doing. That's been determined that this is the right person for the job.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty rare for us to even do an article with somebody who hasn't done that job a handful of times. I mean, it's like, hey, you guys got to come out. I got this great project here in Colorado. We're going to be putting a turret on this house with a round framed roof. And it's like, all right, have you ever done one before? No. All right, well, call us when you have the third one, because we want to know what you don't know yet.
Guys, one of my authors recently told me that he cried when he learned that his project was going to be featured in our annual kitchens and baths issue when he got the call. It's like, what, getting called up by Publishers Clearinghouse and being told you won $15 million, right? But other authors have told me that it was a lifelong ambition to be in Fine Homebuilding. Why do you think it means so much to them? What is the appeal of going to all the effort of letting us slow you down, of like enduring rewriting of your materials you submit? Why do they do it?
Well, I mean, from my experience, I can only think of a couple of times in all these years making articles where somebody said, I'm not really interested in writing because I don't think it pays enough, because it doesn't pay a lot. It's not about that. I think the overwhelming majority of people have told me that they're huge fans, or they've been subscribing for X number of years and they felt like they wanted to give back. If that's what the big community feeling is, like, man, I've been reading this for 15 years. I'm so excited that I get to, put something out there that might help other people the way I've helped. I've benefited so much from this.
What do you think, Brian?
I mean, that was the first thing that came to mind for me as well. And then the only other thing that came to mind was that, when if we were talking about like completed projects, like a kitchen project that's completed and we're featuring it, as more of like a design story, it also maybe, there's so much effort that goes into a great project like that. There's so much time, thought, money, emotion, when you're really talking about an exceptional project, that maybe it's just like, to have someone else recognize, that's what maybe they're feeling, is our recognition of all of that effort, not so much the finished product as it is, the blood, sweat, and tears that went into that finished product.
Right.
And they're all hard.
And, and building is a lonely profession in that way. It's not, you're not doing a whole lot of patting each other on the back. I mean, subcontractors will often come in, the mason will stop by as you're installing crown molding and be like, man, that looks great. I've had that happen where people are nice and open with each other. You also get people who try and tear you down to make themselves feel better. There's a ton of that in building,
Yeah.
I think it probably feels pretty good to have somebody from a national magazine say, hey, we think it's good enough that we want to share with other people how you do it. It's like, oh, you noticed. Somebody cares that I'm taking the time to do this right.
I would add, it's, as you point out, Justin, like, it's validation. It's like, you get a paycheck at the end of a project, right? Or you have this nice thing in your own home, but like, no one sees it except for your client or your family, right? It's, I think builders and remodelers and tradespeople generally have a creative outlet. That's their creative outlet in many cases. And, if you're a painter, you get to share your paintings on the web or say on your Instagram account or whatever. But, of course, there's more ability to do that now. But, no one sees your work oftentimes,
right?
Especially if you're a subcontractor, right?
I remember when I did a cocktail bar in Hartford, Connecticut a few years ago, and I had that same kind of thought process. Like, this is so cool to be the first project that I can actually go back and visit. Like, people I know can come and see the work I did, and I can go back and see it 5 years later and like see how it's holding up. And you don't get that in residential, really. You can drive by and say, hey, look, I built that. That's about it.
Right. Yeah. Brian, you go first. Can you tell me your favorite magazine features that you've worked on in your long career here at the Taunton Press? And it could be from GBA, or it could be from your early part of your career at Fine Homebuilding, or more recently.
Yeah, when you said that this was a question that you wanted us to think about, I got so scattered because there's so many things that have been so much fun to work on. But the article that keeps coming, the one that keeps coming up every time I try to think about another one, the one that keeps coming back to me is a story that I did with Rick Arnold on framing a roof valley. And there's a number of reasons why that range from the fact that it was a really fun photo shoot to be on. The crew was fun. I had rented a lift so that I could get up above them and see what they were doing. So they had this fun quality to it. Rick's process was the way he went about this roof valley was blowing my mind from the moment I got to the job site to the moment I left. He, the house was framed, the roof wasn't up yet, and he was on the ground with a stack of lumber that he started cutting. He started marking and cutting without being on the roof.
And so confidently too.
So confidently.
Almost like a factory worker.
Yeah. And then bringing all these parts of the valley up and having everything fit right on his mark lines, just where they should be. And then, and also, from there to figuring out how to present this in the magazine, how to teach some really complicated geometry and math in the magazine, and really they're having a result that I think that we actually taught this complicated thing really well. For so many reasons, that was one of my favorite stories. And to work with the likes of Rick is just a pleasure. People who have who are not only great craftsmen, but also just sort of natural teachers.
And nice.
Nice is great. Yeah.
What about you, Justin? What's your favorite?
Oh man, it's hard to pick one. I feel like one personal victory of mine was an inside look at box beam levels. I know it's a weird choice, but I'll tell you why. It's because I pitched that article to my boss at the time, who was probably Brian, by the way, and I couldn't get it on a schedule. Like, nobody would be like, nobody cares about this. Nobody's gonna there's nothing to learn about a level. Like, there's not. And I just kept on saying, guys, this is going to be the best tool review we've done in a long time. And I finally got it on there, and there was just the response I got from it was like, holy cow, there's so much to know about what makes one of these levels different than the other, and how these guys are manufacturing these things, how the companies are manufacturing them to withstand life on a job site. And talking to like the president of Stabila, and just asking him the usual journalistic questions that, Patrick, we take for granted at this point, like just kind of poking and looking and digging. And I said, like, so I forget what the accuracy is on a level. Isn't it like 0.001 or something like that? And I remember, anyway, I said to him, I was like, where does this number come from on the vial and the level? Is that just the best we can do? And he was like, he pretty much laughed at me like, oh God, no. Like, we can make a level so accurate that if you slid a piece of paper under it, the bubble would fly off one side. And he's like, that number that we made the level is a balance between accuracy and you being able to actually get the bubble in the middle of the vial. Because it would be so sensitive, you'd never get it in. And all those kind of insights. And here's what we did to the inside of this one so that we could throw it across the room and guarantee that it's going to still be true when you go pick it up. And and we had all these cool cutaways, and Rodney did a great job with the layout. It was very visual. And it just felt like anytime I can do an article where I feel like I'm uncovering something that somebody took for granted or dismissed as not being complicated, that's when I feel like I'm most excited. That's where I get excited. I
got to look up that feature. I don't remember that one, but I clearly need to dig into that.
You also, there's also like there's the category of sort of important articles. And,
yes.
Like, I think Justin and I just talked about articles that were super fun, but, speaking of articles that Justin wrote, I just was looking for some information a couple weeks ago, and I came across an article that he wrote on, it was called "Are Drainable House Wraps Enough?"
Yeah.
And it was part product story on drainable house wraps, but it was also part building science story. And I think that those types of stories are, they're hard to work on. They're challenging to sort of, figure out what to include, what not to include, what actually the story is. They're challenging to present in the magazine, and they're super important to, anyone who's working on houses.
Yeah, I think it's a really important question, Brian, is what do you think the most important article you've worked on is? And mine might be the most recent one I did with Tim Euler on fall protection, because that one was very much like, I never used proper fall protection prior to working with Tim on that article. Granted, I don't do a lot of stuff on roofs, but I still never did it. But there was something about when I went to get the first harness, and I'm looking up information, like, all right, I open it up and it says like, all right, so how do I figure out where to put this anchor on the roof? And the information was so bad, bad, that I went, oh my God, people need help with this, because if this is what they're getting, and I'm trying to find out how to do it, never mind like being forced to, I just couldn't find anything good. And so that it was one of the hardest articles I've put together in a long time, because the information was so hard to find from the experts. And I really feel like we successfully walked away with like 6 pages of, start here. Here's what you need to think about. Here's the gear. Here's how to choose it. Here's how to set it up. And here's how to be safe. And I really feel like that's what we did for people. And that always feels like it's success to me. I want to be helpful,
Yeah.
I'm not a whiz bang kind of a guy.
I don't think most folks who work here are whiz bang. Too impossibly practical, right? I think we'd all agree that visiting job sites for photo shoots is easily one of the best parts of the job of being a fine home building editor. Brian, first, what was the best photo shoot you ever had, and what was the worst? And best can be like most fun, most useful to the readers, whatever you want.
Okay, but I'm just going to start by saying that I'm not going to tell you the worst story, because I've already told it on the podcast, and I'm just not going to do it again. But I will share something about something towards challenging photo shoots.
Somebody needs to dig up the episode.
So we'll figure out what episode it is, and we'll put a link on the podcast page so you all can dig into that story, because it's worth hearing.
Yeah. So the first. When I think about this question, I always think of the first photo shoot I went on. And it was, I don't know who picked, I had never gone on a photo shoot before. I don't know who picked this project and decided to send me on this photo shoot, if it was Kevin Ireton or Chuck Miller, but someone decided that it'd be a good idea to give me a camera, a whole bunch of lighting equipment, and send me to the coast of Portland, Oregon to photograph a house. What could go wrong? Yeah, what can go wrong? Not only a house, but a house that I knew nothing about, and with walls of glass. So like, not only do I not know the story, but a house that's tremendously hard to photograph. But I, for me as a new editor, and having a company credit card and a free flight to the coast of Oregon and a hotel room, I couldn't believe the job that I had landed. Like, I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, pinching myself the whole time to make sure that I actually had this job. And I think I think those photos, I came back, nothing happened. And years later, someone discovered those photos and said, I think we can make a story with this. I think Sean Durham ended up actually like writing a story about the house and publishing the photos. So that was fun. But the other one that I also thought of, this photo shoot in outside of Dallas, Texas. I went out there to shoot a story on decorative concrete floors, so staining concrete. And I got really, I remember being really nervous as I pulled into the neighborhood where this work was being done, because it was a, big developer situation, with houses that you wouldn't suspect would ever land in the pages of Fine Homebuilding magazine. And so I started to get nervous about this, and it was a first-time author, and this woman's name was Shelley Rigsby, and I met her on the job site that morning, and it just, from the moment I met her, everything went so well, and she was this like great professional who knew what she was doing, who cared so much about her work, and it was such an interesting thing. It's sort of a surprising story for Fine Homebuilding, staining concrete floors. She was as much an artist as she was a builder or craftsperson, and it was just delightful to work with her. And the floors were stunning; they were gorgeous. So I remember that was really a fun one. And then the other thing that came to mind was every photo shoot with Gary Striegler, because Gary is he just goes out of his way to make it easy for us to work with him. His houses are pretty large and open, and they make it really a dream to shoot. He's prepared when we get there. In my experience, he's always been prepared when I get there, and the tips are just like oozing out of him. So you sort of can't stop shooting things and getting ideas from him when you're on site with him. And then Gary's just a fun guy to be with.
Agreed.
He's so happy.
And he's just so happy and enthusiastic. And talk about someone who's just thrilled to work with us. I mean, after all these years, Gary is just like delighted when someone comes to town to work with him on an article.
He's a pro.
Yeah.
What about you, Justin?
What do you want first? Favorite or worst?
Whatever.
Well, one of my favorites, I think, was getting the chance to go out to visit Larry Hahn, also in Oregon at the time. Um, it was it was kind of a run of the mill article. No offense to Larry, it just was like kind of it was tools for working with fiber cement siding. So it wasn't, blowing the doors off anybody's magazine. But it was just really cool to be, and I was only out there for a really short trip, really quick turnaround. But I got to meet Larry and hang out with him for a while, go out to dinner, meet his family, his brothers, his sister. The whole family came, and he was kind enough to just kind of show me around the coast of Oregon and tell me all about the history of this and that.
And by this point, he was a legend
Oh
for
yeah,
our brand.
yeah,
Like you were meeting the Rolling Stones of Fine Homebuilding. Am I right?
And just so unassuming, so kind. And it was, we were on a Habitat for Humanity site, and he was where he was very active with Habitat, and he had a whole crew of volunteers that were and he's like, I don't want to be in any of these photos. Let's put all the Habitat workers in the photos. It was just a really great experience. It feels like you kind of went to church. I mean, that's how we joke around about Larry Hahn now. Watching the videos, it's like you feel like you're going to church of Larry Hahn for a little while. The worst one collectively was most of the shoots with Mike Gurton, because it always seemed to be either 100 degrees or -20. It's no fault of Mike's. It's just New England, and that was poor timing. So it's really not a reflection on Mike, but we did like stormproofing your roof, and I had rented a lift so I could be up above the roof to shoot photos. And I had this was when that Milwaukee heated jacket had first come out, and I had that thing on, and I was swapping batteries, trying to stay warm, full coveralls, and I was just dying, like just totally numb. Can't keep the batteries charged when it's that cold in the cameras, so they're trying to like plug them in and put it in your coat so they stay warm enough to charge, and other times it was just brutally hot. And Mike is just a machine. Like, he doesn't stop to have like,
he doesn't even eat, right?
He doesn't even stop to eat. No,
yeah.
I've seen him eat a carrot one time, which he had in his tool belt. He just pulled out a carrot and ate it and then put it back in. He's an incredible force, Mike Gurton. Yeah. And you learn a ton with him. He also, like Larry, is extremely unassuming, very kind, very soft-spoken, never has a bad thing to say about anybody. Just a great guy to work with. I'm sure that many people in the audience listening to this have met Mike at trade shows, and if you haven't, you should go up and say hi. He just has so much to teach. So I jokingly say it was the worst. I recently said that to him, and he's like, I had no idea. I'm like, well, yeah, when you roof a house when it's practically snowing, and in his mind, he's like, this is the ideal time. The shingles aren't hot, nothing's, and I'm moving around, so I'm staying warm.
He's just, this is the time. There's no, this is just what you have to do, right? You guys mentioned Mike Gurton, and you mentioned Rick Arnold earlier, Brian. Who are your other favorite contributors? And I'd like to hear your thoughts on the design side too, because we talk about the builders and remodelers, and I don't think sometimes we talk enough about our contributors on the design or other parts of the magazine.
Yeah. Justin, jump in if anything comes to mind, because I want to think about this for a minute. I mean, I haven't had bad experiences with authors. I mean, I mostly have had great experiences with authors, and even some of the ones that challenged me the most yielded great articles. I mean, I remember one time people left the office because I was having it out with an author on the phone at like 4:30 in the afternoon, and people were feeling uncomfortable, so they left. And it ended up being it was an author on a story called "There's No Escaping the Scraping." It was a story on prepping for paint, and
that was a great article.
Yeah, it turned out. I mean, our back and forth that got heated was about what to keep in the article and what not to, because we have space constraints. Sure. And he wanted everything in there. And you know what? He made it better by fighting me tooth and nail on getting as much as possible in. And it ended up being one of the best painting prep articles we've done probably ever. I mean, he was just so good, and he was full of tips, and it's the real deal. Like, if you're going to prep an older house for paint, don't skip these steps.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, I've had mostly good experiences with all authors. Some new authors don't know what you want from them.
Yeah.
And so you have to. It becomes hard work to really, to squeeze it out of them, or to train them to, provide what you're looking for from the get-go. But I think on the design side, Patrick, I mean, the person who always comes to mind for me is Paul DeGroot, because he is so practical and thoughtful. And design is a hard thing sometimes to design. Ideas and whatnot are hard things to articulate and share in ways that are, it's hard to do how to design.
Yeah.
And he did such a good job of that over the years in his articles. Of course, there's others, Sarah Suzanka and Katie Hutchinson, and some of these architects and designers who did a lot of work in our drawing board department were really good at that.
But I really liked Cusado.
And Cusado,
yeah.
I was just fortunate to work with Paul pretty closely over the years, and that's why he's jumping to mind.
You can't overlook Michael Maines, who just, he was writing for us. He went from builder to designer to, designer for our company to being out on his own and being heavily into building science at this point. We laugh that he can never hit a deadline, and he will always give you twice as much as you need. He is just so thorough. He's like, he jokes that he just has a greater ability to Google things than other people.
Yeah.
But he's just, he knows he knows a lot about everything, and it's very thoughtful responses, and just an all around great guy. He's very active on GBA. And for other people who know the BS and Beer show, obviously know him from that too.
I've observed something. Folks who are intellectually curious are a way better fit for us than the folks who say, "Oh, I've done this way, so this is the way to do it."
Yes.
It's somebody who wants to do a good job and get to the most efficient way to do something, or it's not rote.
Right.
Yeah. There's a obviously, for anyone who's paying attention right now to what we do and our community. I mean, there's a whole new crop right now that we've started to hear from over the past few years, and I think we're going to hear a lot more from in the coming years. Jake Bruton and Ben Bogey, and these guys are sort of
Andrew Grace.
Yeah, exactly. They're all picking up where where Larry and Mike and Gary and Rick and these guys sort of have left off. And they're the same type of builder and architect who care and are curious, want to learn, and are willing, thankfully for all of us, are willing to share.
Yeah.
And wanting to share.
I think that's the beauty of the brand, is very smart people, skilled at what they do, willing to share their knowledge with others, which is no small thing, I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a hard, don't be shy about sending in an email to, fh@taunton.com and saying, "Hey, I don't know what I can do to help. Here's the kinds of projects I have coming up. Is there anything that might be interesting to you guys? We'll come to your job sites. We'll take photos." You don't need to be some god of building to be an author. We don't need it. And we don't need it to be like, "Man, I landed the job of a lifetime. I'm working on a 7,000 square foot mansion." Like, we don't care about that. We want like the 19th colonial house that you extended the roof line on.
Yeah. What do you do now that that feels really efficient, feels really smart, and you've gotten there through experience and through mistakes and learning from your mistakes? If you can answer that question, send us an email, because you've got your article. You know what to write about.
I always like to ask people too, like, what do you think that you do better than your competition? Like, what do you feel like is the thing that you kind of hang your hat on?
Yeah.
Man, when I get to do crown molding, I just feel like I'm so solid at it, like I can do it in my sleep. Like, I want to talk to you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And tell us the other thing I would say to potential authors is, tell us what we need to publish.
Yeah.
Amen.
What are we failing to publish? What's new? What's changing? What have we just not covered enough? And if you're doing it well, that's another reason that we're going to watch you as an author.
Right.
I think we would all agree, Jeff included, that the media landscape is vastly different from when you guys started and I started in this business. How do you think Taunton can continue to survive and be relevant in a very different world from when the company was founded? That's up to you, Brian.
Yeah, Brian. You can do it.
I don't know that I mean, I think that's a question we've all been trying to answer for a long time, and I don't think it's answerable. However, I do think that I don't think that the challenges that we have facing us, business challenges are business challenges, and they're not really they're different from what you're asking. But the challenges in media, I think, are opportunities. I think we can look at them just as much as opportunities as challenges. I think the fact that you can go on Instagram and get very similar information to what you're getting in Fine Homebuilding, or you can listen to it any number of now probably a dozen podcasts that are similar to this. I think it's just going to create appetite.
Yeah,
I think more people are going to get excited, are going to get enthusiastic, and are going to listen and consume more. Maybe it gets a little bit more spread out, but that's okay. I mean, the truth is that, as we all have to do our job to support a company that we work for in the best way possible. But the truth is, I think that the mission that we're on, in terms of editors and journalists covering building, is getting fulfilled better than ever, and we're just part of it. We get to be part of that, and we get, we have this ambassador program, and how many great authors over the past 4 years have come from this Instagram community. And we also can do what we can do in the print magazine, and we can do with skilled videographers who we have on staff, what people who are, posting on Instagram can't. And that's not taking anything away from what they're doing, because some people are doing a remarkable job sharing information out there. Like, really, they blow me away. But we have resources. We have 8 pages. We have an editor that's going to put a whole lot of effort into something. We have an art director who can hire an illustrator to do a killer drawing. So, that's what we have, that it will continue to help us be special. And so we're all, the way I see it, we're all just kind of working together. And I hope that's the way other people see it as well. Like, we're excited about what you're doing to make your own content, and let us help you to make some content that will appear in the pages of our magazine or on our website.
Mm-hmm. Justin, what do you think about with your new role, editor at large? Like, what do you hope to be able to do with regard to content that you felt like you couldn't do as editor, or on the staff all the time?
Well, there's obviously people want, for a while there it was like, well, what's more important, digital content or print content, podcasts or videos? And it really, the answer that became clear was it's all important, because everybody wants something in a different way. So we just need to be everywhere doing all sorts of different kinds of presentation styles. The thing I like about the new role is that I will be able to do a lot more video, which it's like a more direct, to me, like a more direct line to the information. So I don't have to talk to somebody, figure out how to word it and get it down on paper, figure out which photos go with it, get the layout in, have it go to the printer, have it come back. And then by the time it even lands in your mailbox, you might not even be a guy who likes magazines. So you're never going to hear it. You're never going to see it. Video, we can do some things live. We can add some nuance to it. We can kind of on the fly decide, oh, this is the important thing. Or we can look through the lens and say, that's not really getting it. Let's do it again. Let's do that over again, because I can tell right now that we missed it, and I want to make sure we catch this. I don't know. It's just like and I'm not even talking about live streaming, just video in general. It condenses that timeline so we can be churning things out faster. And I don't know. Just bring. It's not like I'm giving anybody news that video is an interesting way to share a lot of information, but it's. Because I still think that a lot of people are not doing a great job. They're not using video to its full potential. there's still having the camera in the right place, highlighting the right things, asking the right questions is crucial. And there's a lot of home building video out there right now where nothing's happening in the video. You're just hearing about stuff. So I think there's a big opportunity for showing somebody doing something. It's as as obvious as that sounds.
There's a history there. Like we started making VHS tapes in the 80s, right? It was like,
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, I think the most popular thing we have on YouTube is still Larry Hahn framing houses from, I don't know, it's probably, Jeff, you probably know the video because they were the 90s.
I think like 87.
87.
I think so.
Yeah. It's the most popular video we have.
They're timeless, and his delivery is just so spot on.
I mean, just watching him sink nails by hand is just like, how's that happen?
Two licks.
Yeah, 2 hits. It's just crazy.
We had a question on GBA yesterday. Someone had one pre-hung door to install and didn't have a finish nailer, and asked if they should hand nail it or use screws. And I had to think about it for a second. I thought to myself, I couldn't imagine hand nailing a door, keeping it square level and plumb with having to hammer nails into it. Like, it's like screws, but I use screws. And then I think about, like, of course, Dan Colbert jumps in. He's like, yeah, when I started building, we didn't have any nailers.
Yeah.
I think, geez, that's a skill that hand nailing anything is a skill that I feel fortunate to have to have not had to learn.
Oh yeah, I always think about it with crown molding because for me it's like I'm barely keeping that cope joint together the way I want. Just get that other hand, sneak it up there, and fire that nail. If I had to like hold it and start the nail and set the nail, and
it's really.
I think you've just really answered why crown molding is so much more popular than it used to be, right?
And by the way, in those old houses, the nails were freaking huge. I mean, you ever do demo on an old house? Those guys were like railroad spikes to put trim on.
Oh yeah.
Popeye forearms.
So, I got 2 questions for both of you. What can we be doing better for starters? And what's next for Justin and Brian?
What can we be doing better? Just more. I want to see more content at a faster pace, not less quality in order to go faster, just
more of it, being
more efficient on the back end so that we can get more of it out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, we have yet to, we have at Fine Homebuilding anyway, GBA does this, and this is something that I learned over the past year or so, how well it can work, but we've yet to have that sort of immediacy factor in our digital part of Fine Homebuilding. We still largely rely on time-consuming development processes and the magazine process to get stuff on Fine Homebuilding. But although we've started a little bit with webinars and things, but I'd like to see us be a little bit more immediate with content and quick with content for the website. And the other thing that that I think about, and I think Justin brought it up, and gave a great example with the story about the box beam levels, is that I think we're so hyper-focused on practical content that we sometimes forget that our readers are super interested and geeky about stuff too. And I think we could have more content that is obviously relevant about something that is part of the building world, but that is more just simply more interesting to read about. Scott Gibson wrote a piece for GBA recently on that I'm going to put in the magazine because I think it's worth sharing with our print readers on insulated glazing units and where we're at with insulated glass. But he did this remarkable thing where he tracked the whole history of insulated glass, so that when you get to what's going on now, you really understand. You really understand it well. And I think that our readers are open to that. And we've been so hyper focused on this practical how-to, and I think we can't lose that focus. I mean, that's our bread and butter, and that's, I think, what something that people expect and need and want from us. So we can't lose that focus. But I do think there's a place to add this level of interest and sort of maybe more curiosity pieces. I think we can add that, and I think people will be surprised and enjoy those kinds of articles. And we try, we all know we keep our mission very focused at Fine Homebuilding, but we've also tried a lot of things over the years, and we've had some successes and some duds.
Yep.
Yeah.
One dud's not a problem. You tried, and you as long as you don't repeat it
more than 6 times.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you guys.
Yeah. And don't be a stranger. I'm happy to come back. I'll share some stuff from the road.
Some gory details.
Sure.
Can't wait.
So what's the name of the company and the Instagram feed?
Fink and Son. That's it. That's the Instagram. It's the website. It's the company name. It's the lifestyle.
I'm going to check in regularly because, yeah.
I don't need you poking holes in my stuff, Patrick, and being like, that's not the code.
Patrick, you did a wonderful job as a host today.
Yes,
you're a great host, but I also would have liked to have heard your answers to all these questions. So
I was thinking the same thing.
You've been doing the same thing for a long time too.
Can I at least hear what your favorite article was? And it can be from JLC because we all know you were there too.
When you guys were talking about that, I have different favorites for different reasons. And you guys mentioned like the greatest utility. One that I was thinking about was with Mike Sloggett was how to replace a window in a brick veneer wall.
Oh my God,
yeah. And what was perhaps most validating about that is we did a video at the same time, and I showed the layout to Colin when it was all done. And he's like, you expressed in 6 pages what it took us an hour of video to explain.
Yeah.
And so that was that was perhaps one of the most satisfying for its importance. For like sheer adventure was going to Sudbury, Ontario, Canada to see Brian Kitchen and God, I forget those guys' name. Nick Atchison, right. And so they're drywall contractors in Sudbury, Ontario, and they just know their drill. And Sudbury was such a fascinating place to visit. I could have never imagined I would have been there for any other reason. So that was that's 2 of my favorites. I have lots of favorites.
I remember having a conversation with either Nick or Brian, I forget which. And we've done a lot of articles over the years about finishing drywall, and they've been very popular. Myron has done a ton of them. And I never really had a grasp of like, well, so how important do these guys think that the automatic tools are? And I remember talking to Nick or Brian and being like, are these really crucial? I mean, do you ever hand tape? And he goes, if the nearest supplier that will sell these to me is 3 hours away, if my stuff broke this morning, I would stop the job, drive and get it, and come back.
And you understand when you see that they do an entire tape coat in like a 1,200 or 1,400 square foot house in a morning. You know, it's mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a lot of favorites, and I have a lot of favorite authors. Like you said, this is a great job. It's a pretty good gig.
For a while, we had our favorite articles that we would do in each episode. We just picked a topic and then picked out some, just to surface some old stuff that we hadn't thought about in a while.
We'll do that. And maybe in the upcoming podcast, I'll answer some more of these questions. Brian, you can remind me to weigh in on this stuff.
Yeah, that would be great.
Cool.
Well, I think that's all the time we have today. I want to thank Justin, Brian, and Jeff for joining me. And thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to finehomebuilding.com/podcast. And please like, review, or comment however you're listening or watching. It helps other folks find our podcast. Thank you all very much for listening, and thanks you guys for joining me.
Thank you.